Hello you guys and welcome back to a new video and Merry Christmas to you. This video is a little bit different from normally, but this is actually a little preparation for the upcoming video. So in the next video I will be making a Christmas wreath together with my sister. And well, I will actually be decorating it together with my sister, and in this video I'm going to throw it and trim it. And I thought it would be helpful to show it to you in detail, so I'm going to explain to you how to throw like a big donut shape and how to trim that. And then if you'd like, you can check out the next video that I will be posting later this week, where my sister and I will be decorating it with some Christmassy things, and we will also be turning it into a candle holder. So I think that will look really cool, so I would definitely check out that video. But in case you want to make it, I thought I'd make a separate video to explain how to throw it. You can do a lot of different things with donut shapes, so you don't necessarily have to make a Christmas wreath with it, which would be fun. You can also make it into a vase, or do like a lot of different things from it. You can also decorate it as a donut and just use it as a decoration piece, whatever you'd like. But enough talking, let's head over to the wheel and get started with throwing a big donut. I start off by attaching the clay onto the bed, and I just do this with a little bit of water, and then I smack the clay onto the bed so that it is nice and stuck. And then I start centering it. As you can see, I'm using quite a big piece of clay because the Christmas wreath is going to be quite big. But if you like to make a smaller size donut for whatever you'd like to make, you can of course do the same things as I'm doing in this video, but then it will probably just be a little bit easier. To center the clay, I cone it up and I press it down, as you can see here, and I repeat this multiple times until the clay is fully centered. And with a big piece of clay like this, I often like to cone it up twice and then press it down. And that way it's easier to get a little bit more height, and this makes centering a little bit easier. And when pressing down, I also prefer to press the clay a little bit forward. I feel like this helps me to get the clay into the middle a little bit easier. And then when the clay is fully centered, I start flattening the clay. Since the Christmas wreath is going to be quite wide, I need to press the clay quite far downwards. I do this by making a fist with my right hand, and I hold my left hand on the outside of the clay, and then I press downwards. And then when the clay is flatter, it's a little bit harder to get it even wider. So then I hold both of my hands together and I put even more pressure on the clay to get it nice and flat, just like this. And then when I have it as wide as I want to make the wreath, I start opening up the shape. And this is going to be a little bit different from normally, because this time I'm going to press all the way down to the bed, and I take away all of the clay in the middle, because normally when you're making a pot you of course need a bottom. But since this is going to be a wreath and it's going to have a hole in the middle, I cut away all of the clay in the middle. Sometimes it's hard to get rid of all of the clay in the middle just by using your fingers, so what I then like to do is use a wooden knife and cut it away. Then I saw that my clay wasn't fully centered and was a little bit wobbly, so I just held my hands around it and put a little bit of pressure on top of it to get it a little bit more in the middle. It's still a little bit wobbly, but it's quite hard to keep it perfectly centered when you're working with a big size like this. And then I start opening up the donut shape. And I do this by pressing the middle finger of my right hand in the middle of the clay, as you can see here. So I keep some clay on the inside and I keep some clay on the outside. And here I do leave some clay because it does need a bottom, because I just want it to be a closed form. So I'm not pressing all the way down to the bed. Then I take a sponge in my right hand and I press towards my left hand on the inside while making an upwards movement. And when doing this, I try to pull the wall up straight, so I'm basically making a cylinder. And when doing this, I also spin my wheel quite slowly, because otherwise it may collapse or something might go wrong. So to keep it a little bit more controlled, it could be nice to let the wheel spin a little bit slower. And then I do the exact same thing with the clay that I left on the outside. So I'm also pulling up a wall here, and I just do this by pressing with my right hand towards my left hand and slowly make the wall higher and thinner. And I just repeat this multiple times, and eventually we will be closing the whole shape and attach the two walls onto each other at the top. And because of that, you don't want to make the outside wall too wide, otherwise this will just get harder. When I have the walls as thin as I like to have them, I slowly start closing the shape. So first I take the inside and I pull the top of the cylinder a little bit outwards, so that it already gets closer to the wall on the outside. And then I start working on the rim on the outside, and I slowly press this inwards, just by making it like a little bit circular. And I like to make a movement from the bottom all the way up to the top, that way it stays in one flowing shape. And just like this, I just keep moving both of the walls a little bit close to each other until I can finally fully close it. I saw that the wall on the outside was a little bit too wide, so I held my hands around it and slowly moved them a little bit inwards. That way the whole piece will become a little bit smaller, and that way the walls will get closer together. And here I'm also just pressing the walls more towards each other on one side. This is quite difficult. I think this is like one of the most difficult projects that I've ever drawn. I was quite afraid that this one would collapse, but I'm quite happy that it didn't. Then I saw that I didn't really have enough space to fully close it, so I decided to pull up the wall on the outside a little bit more. So I carefully held my index finger of my left hand on the inside and I pulled up the clay a little bit more because I just needed a little bit of height. This was quite scary because the clay was already quite thin, but I just really needed that height, otherwise I wouldn't be able to close it. Then I was almost able to close it and I took away the slip in between the two walls. You don't want there to be too much slip in between, otherwise this may crack when drying, and we of course don't want any cracks. And then I just slowly press the two walls against each other until the shape is fully closed, which is quite hard. And when doing this I would also recommend to spin your wheel very slowly to just slowly attach the two walls onto each other. And then as you can see now it is closed, but you still see the line of the two walls where they are attached to each other. So I like to go over this with my finger and also with a sponge to get rid of the line. And I just move this around a little bit and also change the shape of the donut or the wreath a little bit in whatever shape you'd like. I like it to be as round as possible, so I changed it a little bit. But the line at the top was still quite visible, so then I took this wooden loamer. And I also went over it a few times with this. With the wooden loamer you can just put a little bit more pressure on it and work a little bit more detailed sometimes. And then the donut shape is finished and I go over it once more with a sponge to get rid of any of the lines that were made by the wooden loamer and to just smooth it out. And then I cut away some extra clay at the outside of the donut as well. Before I let it dry, it is important to make a little hole in the piece. I have this hole maker that I use for that. And it's important to make a hole because the air in the piece needs a way out. Otherwise the clay will shrink while drying and then the piece may crack. And we don't want that, so it's important to make a little hole in it. Now this hole is quite big, but since it's going to be the bottom of the piece it doesn't really matter for me. But if you'd like you can also make it smaller just by using a needle tool or something. And then after the piece has dried for 2 days and is leather hard, I start trimming it. So I put it upside down on top of my wheel, on top of the giving grip that I always like to use, and then I start trimming it. Trimming this piece was actually quite fun because it's quite different from trimming a normal piece. So with this one it is important to make it as circular as possible. So here at the sides I cut away quite some clay to make it nice and circular because this was quite flat since it was attached to the bed. But I just slowly cut this away on the inside and a little bit on the outside and just make it nice and circular. For this I like to use a small trimming tool, that way it's also easier to get it nice and centered. And then after that I like to go over it with a bigger trimming tool to make it nice and smooth and also get rid of any of the smaller lines that were made by the smaller trimming tool. And then the trimming is actually already done and I like to go over it with a sponge to smooth it out even more. And then I go over it with this trimming tool. This trimming tool isn't really sharp, so it doesn't really trim, but it helps me to get rid of the slip that was created by the sponge. And then I go over it with my finger to smooth it out even more. And now the donut or the wreath is finished and I am going to decorate it together with my sister in the next video, as I said in the beginning of this video. So if you'd like, I would definitely check it out. I will be posting the video later this week, but maybe it's already up. In that case I will put a link in the description so that you can easily find it, and there you can see the final results after decorating it, turning it into a candle holder and also glazing it. So I would definitely check that out. And I also have a lot of different Christmas instruction videos and also older instruction videos, so if you'd like you can just check out my account and just scroll through all of the videos. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!